The following is a Spirit Street production.
It's Friday, people, and that is Ask the Big 12 Insiders question day. A lot of stuff going around in college athletics. A crazy rumor has come out. We're going to get into that and more today with Fitz. This is the Big 12 Insiders.
Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show, presented by Synergy Financial Partners. Now let's go to booming North Texas, home of Studio 73. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Big 12 Insiders. This is Brien Hanley with Tim Fitzgerald.
Hey.
Fitz, how is it going today?
Beautiful day in the Flint Hills. Just gorgeous out. So I'm trying to get my work done early so I can do something. I don't know. I don't know.
I understand. The missus is out of town here, so I don't know what I'm going to do. And usually, a lot of times, people think, oh, your wife's out of town. You do all this stuff. Yeah, you usually just sit at home. So I'm probably just going to sit at home and actually wishing that she was still here. So
let's start this with a little marriage guide for the young fellas that might be watching. When your wife goes out of town on business or, with friends or family, you go through this phase of you go crazy. You call your buddies up, you go out, you go do stuff. And eventually you get to the point where, oh boy, I'm just going to sit at home and not do anything. I'm not going to do the dishes. I'm not going to vacuum. I'm not going to do any of that until an hour before she returns. And then I'll run around and do it all.
Yeah, that's exactly
right,
right.
Boys.
Yeah. And it's a good plan too, Fitz. It's a good plan. If you first of all, if you don't move and you don't do a lot, then there's not a big mess to clean up. Just something to keep in mind.
Right.
Just something to keep in mind. So let's get into a little bit. This article came out and talking about the SEC trying to expand. And I don't want to butcher the guy's name that put the article out there. Greg
Flugar.
Flugar,
I think it is. He actually has a channel. It's a great college football channel.
Yes.
And he knows his, what. I mean, he's had some other rumors. I think it might have been USC, UCLA to the Big Ten. He's nailed some things. He's got a source somewhere that's pretty damn good. So when he says something, it's just not some YouTube guy spitting it out there. He's got a track record. He's taking his heat. There's no way that'll ever happen. And then a week later it happens.
Right.
So when he speaks, we need to listen because he's hearing things. And basically the whole gist of it was about the ACC and that the Big Ten, which is his home ground because he's a Minnesota guy, he covers all of college football and does a great job, would be Florida State and Miami because they want into that Florida area. That makes some sense to me. I find it hard to believe they'd pass on North Carolina, Virginia, because those two schools are massive and fit the conference profile really well. But that's what he's reporting. And because of that, North Carolina, Virginia, and Clemson would go to the SEC, with Kansas potentially being the fourth ad. Right. I found that pretty interesting because I see Kansas as Big Ten. It fits in there academically and everything. I just don't see in a football-driven conference, at least right now. Maybe Kansas will just keep climbing the ladder. But boy, your ladder gets steeper in that conference. I got to get some more information on this because you might end up with some other ACC schools or even West Virginia being competitive for that final spot if it's true.
Right. And my thing is like, okay, if all this shakes out, why would Kansas want to leave and go to the SEC? Now, the first thing is money. Yeah. That's number one over anything is money. And I know we've talked about the Big 12 getting this basketball contract in place so they can get the money kind of close to what the other conferences are getting. I think Brett Yormark, look, I'm sure he's already doing this. I think he's got to get on it. And this has to be something, Fitz, in my opinion, it's got to get done this summer. I think this thing has to get done this summer because I think the NBA and NBC deal is going to eventually get done this summer. It'll come out right after the NBA finals or something like that. And I just think that the Big 12's got to get that done. So if they do, and then the money starts to shake out the way that the money's starting to shake out, we'll see some other things take place. I think this is a real big summer for college athletics and especially the Big 12 conference.
Yeah. Brett Yormark's got some contractual things that might block him from starting too soon, but certainly having the in-house discussions needs to be advanced and probably leaked to the media so that the entities start lining up. And I got to tell you, this all hinges on the ACC. And I just don't know that any of us really know what these conferences are talking. There might be a little fake to the left to go to the right here to try to get the schools you want.
Right.
With that said, I think the SEC will add 4 new schools if the ACC comes apart. And I agree with Greg in the fact that probably just 2 at this time for the Big Ten, because Notre Dame just sits out there. And that's the one they want. So if they're going to go above 20, that will be the trigger.
Right.
I think 20 is the number conferences might settle into if the ACC comes apart.
Yeah, I think 20 is kind of that number. Look, just thinking about it from the outside looking in, you talk about the Big Ten, and you mentioned it earlier as far as teams saying one thing or maybe having somebody look left when they're actually going right.
Right.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with this thing, or a lot to say about this, because look, UCLA and USC came out of nowhere. And I mean, nobody knew that they were going to hightail it. Oklahoma and Texas, you had heard some rumblings a little bit, but that kind of came out of nowhere, So I think you're right on this one, Fitz. Not that you're not right any other time, but I think you're onto something here with something's going to happen that we're not expecting. For me, that's starting to get into this, the sports media world. I kind of like that. I kind of like the unexpected. Now, I don't like the crazy chaos of some of this stuff going on. I don't like that, but I like the unexpected. Oh, really? That happened. I remember when Texas and OU, I was on vacation when all that broke. I kind of like that. Now, it hurt the conference and all that stuff. I didn't like that part of it. But with, I guess, at school, with things are a little bit more solidified for the teams that you root for, and then you see this movement and all this stuff, I think it's kind of a good thing. I think fans, they get a little jittery. Let's say that they get a little jittery, but I think the little bit of chaos here and there is kind of good for college athletics right now.
I agree. We got some questions over here. We'll get to them in a second, but let me add this. I think at this point, how the money's balanced, and you're right about the Big 12 needing to show some urgency to show to members that, hey, we're going to get more money when we do this basketball thing. Any school in the Big 12 at this moment, if they get an offer from the Big 10 and SEC, basically have to go. The differential in money is that big.
Right.
And maybe a promise for the future to stay in a basketball friendly place where it really is important. It's not the lead sport. Football will always be that. You can't make that mistake, but it will be a very close second, as opposed to some conferences where honestly it's not second. The Big Ten's pretty close. SEC is just not. It's not at all. It's a filler. And in fact, some schools, men's basketball isn't even their second sport. They look at baseball or even women's basketball like South Carolina. That's the second most important sport. So I just don't see the fit for Kansas. I think they fit the Big Ten, as I've said. But the SEC, as someone points out here, it would be Robert would renew their rivalry with Mizzou and kind of tie Mizzou in a little bit better to the SEC. So there's a lot of moving parts. It's down the road a bit, but if Greg Pfluger says it, I'm going to listen because I trust him and respect his source and how he delivers it immensely.
Right. Yeah, I definitely respect it. Like you said, he's been right several times. The thing that I wouldn't get too overblown about is the Kansas-Missouri rivalry. Number one, I think Missouri has probably missed Kansas more than Kansas has missed Missouri in this thing. Number two, if they really wanted to play, they could. If Kansas was really that concerned with the rivalry and really wanted to play Missouri in basketball and football, they could do it. And they don't. So I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think that's more of what the fans would want. But let's get to Canelio, get to his question here. Good Friday to both of you. Said, in 3 years, where do you see both college football and hoops at in comparison to right now.
Right.
First off, I want to tell Cornelio, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate that. We're a growing channel, so we appreciate everything that you're doing for us. So thank you very much there. But in 3 years, as far, I guess the context is a little question here. Like, are you talking about conferences? Because if we're talking about conferences, it'll be totally different. Right. In 3 years, it's gonna be chaos. I still think there'll be 4 because I don't think the ACC is going away, but I just think it's gonna look totally different. I just think the number of schools that are in it will be less. The actual schools that are in it are going to be totally different. It just, things will be totally different now.
I can see in 3 years there being a number of conferences. In fact, I think all 5 what we consider the big conferences will be around. Yeah. I don't think the Pac-12 is dead. I think it's just going into hibernation and will reemerge as, some combination of the 2 leftovers and Mountain West and maybe some American. And will it be a power conference? Probably not, but it'll probably sit above the other non-power conferences.
Right.
In the same way that the Big Ten and SEC will sit above the Big 12, the Big 12 will be a solid third, almost on their own tier. And I see the same thing for the ACC. If schools leave and join Big 10, SEC, and Big 12, I think they will regroup with a lot of very good programs out east. Again, not a power conference by current standards, but on the level of the Pac-12. So it's also almost like 4 tiers within FBS football. You got the Big 10 SEC, then the Big 12 in an old tier, the ACC and Pac-12, and then everyone else. Because at that point, the American and Mountain West will just be gutted by movement. So it's going to be interesting. And I think basketball will undergo some changes. I'm not sure when the basketball contract's up for CBS and the tournament contract, but that could get pretty hairy.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one thing is, we talk about where football, and again, I love that question. Where do we think football and basketball will be in 3 years? And you mentioned that the Big 12 is on its own tier, which I think is an excellent analogy.
Right.
Do people think that the Big 12 is never going to be able to compete for a national championship? Is that where we're at with this, Fitz? Because with everybody, first of all, I read another article today that, oh man, the Big 12, do we even think it's going to be a real conference without Texas and OU? I'm like, man, they haven't watched a Big 12 football game probably in 5-10 years. I go, for somebody to actually say that. But besides that, is that where we're at now? Do we think that nobody is ever going to be able to compete for a national championship? Is that kind of the filler? And maybe that's part of what this question was about.
Yeah. Look, competing for a football championship in a environment in which student athletes are already getting paid by the university, which won't replace the NIL, that will still exist. That bigger budget's going to make it difficult, but not impossible. K-State's always competed at a pretty high level, and other schools in this conference, because you develop players. Everyone else is shopping for the 5 stars that come in and be big stars. A lot of programs in the Big 12 look at this as, you know what, we need to get the players that we can get, that we see a bright future for. They may not be there now, but in 2 years, they're going to be at that level. That's what these conferences, a lot of these members do. And I see this happening also in the NIL world, because Kansas State's doing something really curious right now with its football NIL. Yeah, it's going out and getting some players with NIL, but it's not looking for the stars. It's focusing its NIL on retention, not recruiting, to make sure people aren't plucking a bunch of players out of your program.
Right.
And I think that consistency is going to be something that will be a huge advantage for any program. So, yeah, I think one of the Big 12 teams, if it's stable and can start climbing the ladder, can compete. Now, can they win? I don't know. But we'll see where it goes. The Big 12 is going to be a very competitive and fun football conference and an elite basketball conference.
Yeah.
And it'll be present. And people who know, and people who don't just kind of salivate at big brands, and that's all they can see.
Yeah. Well, I love that approach and what you're saying as far as Kansas State. I think other schools, I think Iowa State has that approach. I think Oklahoma State kind of has that approach. I think for the most part, I think the Big 12 teams kind of have that approach.
Right.
Now, Colorado's different. They're just getting in.
Yep.
I think even TCU, to an extent, Fitz, kind of goes out there a ton into the portal as well. I said, but for the most part, the Big 12 schools are kind of developmental. And I think that's kind of the road to doing this. Now, on the flip side of that, you have to do a good job up front. And when I mean up front, the upfront recruiting. You know, I think that's going to mean that you're going to have to start recruiting better players. If everything can't just be developmental and that's it. Right. You know, you're going to sit for 2 years. You can't, in that sense. And I've always said this, that's why schools can't always compete, because I'm not saying you have to go get 5 stars and that's the only way you can win, but you do have to go get kids that can play when they get on campus. Right. You have to have some of those guys, whether it's a 3-star or a 4-star. I don't care what, if they're a 0-star. If you have kids that can play as soon as they get there, the better your program is going to be. And it doesn't always have to be the 5-star kid. Now, granted, you want some of those developmental guys, and I've always given fans a hard time in general because they always believe, well, you just got to develop and you got a red shirt. And I'm like, look, man, look at some of these top programs. Just look at them and say, hey, all those guys aren't 5-star guys, and they're playing early. You've got to be one of those teams too. I think that's where the Big 12 will try to navigate this thing, and not just be the transfer portal or transfer portal conference because Colorado is doing it, or maybe TCU is doing it. I just don't think they're going to do that just for destination purposes alone. Right. So that's just my take.
When these programs get in a battle with a highly recruited recruit in your backyard, or maybe had some tie to your school, you need to win that, and you need to have enough NIL to win it. Right. Because I also believe that a homegrown player who's a 4 or 5-star holds more value for you than the outside schools, unless they're just absolutely elite.
Right.
And, you know, we see that at K-State with Avery Johnson, whose NIL is rumored to be $1 million. And, you know, that's taking your NIL and keeping someone at home. I imagine Dylan Edwards came in at a lesser number, but if he proves his worth, again, he'll be up there. Lincoln Cure out in Goodland has great value to Kansas State, so he'll be an NIL contender. But for the most part, they're still bringing in players around them that others are frankly missing on, like Ben Sennett, that you can develop. So it's, you know, excuse me for all my K-State references. It's just my point where I have my most knowledge, but we've got a lot of great questions. So we can stop my K-State stuff.
No, you're just fine. We are going to take a quick break here. On the other side of this, keep throwing those questions in, because that's what we're going to dive into once we come back from the break. You're going to hear from our partners here with Synergy Financial Partners, and then we'll be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the vision is to build the world's largest consumer financial education and empowerment company. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to Studio 73.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to Big 12 Insiders. Appreciate it. Again, it's Brien Hanley with Tim Fitzgerald. So, Fitz, here's a statement. Now, this isn't a question. I'm just going to start this off real quick here with some feel good, something that lets us know that we're doing a good job. Look, I'd just like to say another great show with really great guests. You know what? That's something on a Friday. I'm feeling down about myself. My wife's not here, but this makes me feel good, man. Number one, thank you. I appreciate it. And Fitz thanks you too. But, you know, sometimes we just need somebody to tell us that we're doing a good job, Fitz. You know?
Well, I know he's a quality individual by his name. Any guy named Timothy has that good English, Scottish, Irish heritage, and they're telling the truth. And sometimes it gets you into trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's get into it. I am just digging around for some questions here. Let's see.
This is the part of hosting I don't do well with, trying to find the questions while hosting. So I'm glad you're surfing.
They get it. They get it. They understand what we're doing. I just want them to keep asking. Just keep throwing the questions in the comments and we'll find them. So I'd heard several years ago that KU and the Big Ten had spoken, but our football situation was so bad that they passed. I'll use a KU grad. How's it going, Scott? Living in Georgia. So I'd love to see us play in Atlanta or Athens. I mean, I heard the same things a while back too. It makes a lot of sense. As far as them passing, I should say, it makes a lot of sense for them passing. I'm still not sure that KU is a good fit, though. I'm just still not sure. But we can say whatever we want about their football program, what it used to be. I think KU is on a upward trajectory. But, if you're KU, let's just say if all things are equal and the money is the same or close. Let's say the money's close. KU is a football school. I don't care how good or it's not a football school. KU is a basketball school. Excuse me. And I don't care how good football is. It is a basketball school. Do you want to be in a conference with just Kentucky, or do you want to be in the conference where you're currently at with all these schools that are really, really good in basketball? Look, we can say whatever we want about the SEC, but there's about 3 or 4 schools that really care that much about basketball.
Right.
Fitz, you covered it earlier. So the rivalry would be Kentucky. Well, you play Kentucky every year anyway.
Yeah.
So you're not missing anything without that. So I just don't think that's a dog that KU wants to get into. I don't think that's a doghouse you want to get into playing in SEC football. It's different.
Yeah, Scott, let me add to this by saying I have no doubt KU discussed something with the Big Ten. Back when the conference started to erode, everyone talked to everyone. Everyone was in survival mode.
Right.
I can guarantee you 100% that despite what they were saying, almost every Pac-12 institution dipped its toe in the Big 12 to see what it was about. And some, thought culturally it just wasn't a good fit.
Right.
The Big 12 agreed. There was a question up there about possibly adding Washington State or Oregon State in the future. I'm afraid unless it goes to 32 schools per conference, which I'm not in favor of that at all. That's just 2 16-team conferences that are distant cousins. If it goes to 32, yeah. But just at 20 or even 24, there's going to be some other options out there that get you into more dense population areas that might work better for you. I feel horrible about Washington State and Oregon State, but I just don't see them at this time getting an invite.
Yeah, I don't either. I was one of the people that thought, okay, this thing is going to shake out. They'll eventually come to the Big 12. Well, the Big 12 just didn't extend the offer, and they're not going to extend the offer. And because I thought that Cal and Stanford would come, but Cal and Stanford stuck their nose up at us. And then, well, look what happened to you. And so I just don't know. I thought they're a viable candidates. I'm just not sure if it's actually what's going to happen to them because they had good football programs. They're good, solid football programs. I don't know how long that lasts. The way that they are, I'm just not sure how long that lasts. Plus, you look at the facilities for both of them. I think that's another thing that's just not, I shouldn't say up to snuff, but it just isn't. I know we can say there's some smaller schools like Cincinnati has a tiny stadium. I go, but they got other stuff going on at Cincinnati. I go, so it just makes them different. You can't keep them in the same kind of argument that you have with Washington State and Iowa State.
Culturally, they're a home run.
Yes.
They're an absolute Big 12 style institutions. I think they're both land grants. I think they have a lot of connections and they're competitive in many sports. I mean, Oregon State in baseball is pretty damn good. Yes. I think from that standpoint, they're great additions. But how much do they bring you? And in this world in which we don't really often think about geography being important in realignment, there is a level to that. And that's a commitment to the fourth corner of the U.S. You would literally be with UCF, and if you add UConn and you've got the Arizona schools, you'd be in the other 3 corners of the country. That just stretches you even further and adds another layer of travel issues. So I'd love to have them, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I don't see that either. I don't see that. Our man K-Ned asked a question here. Which Big 12 school doesn't think they should rule the conference?
Good point. It's a great point. Everyone should think that.
Exactly. I think everybody should believe. And you know how I am, Fitz. I don't like the woe is me fan. I don't like the woe is me school. Oh, woe is me. Nobody thinks we're any good. No. Or, hey, we're really good, but I don't want anybody to say that we're good. I want to sneak up on everybody. No. I don't believe in that. If Iowa State's supposed to be really good, then dagnabbit, go be good.
Yep.
If Houston is supposed to be really good, then it's okay to say that you're really good and go be good. So I love this question. I don't think anybody should think that. Now, privately, maybe they're saying that, behind closed doors, you get a coaching staff that says, man, if we can get the 6 wins, they ought to give us a raise. I'm sure there's several schools out there that are like that, but I don't think if you're a fan base, you can hear it from me first. You always think you have a chance. You always think you should win every game. Don't go into this or anything as the woe is me. Oh, we're just happy to be here. Don't do that. I don't like that, Fitz. I don't believe in that.
Right. And there's some of that in the SEC. Now, of course. Every fan base thinks they can compete, but there's some programs that just won't be able to compete on a consistent basis with Georgia and Alabama, although there's some doubt around Alabama right now. If you're in the Big Ten and you're a football program like Purdue or Northwestern, you're basically that mid-major basketball program or low-major basketball program that goes on a non-conference tour to pay your bills.
Yeah.
You're in it for the money, but you're going to get your ass kicked on Saturday.
Yep.
That's not a good existence, folks.
No.
That I can't imagine making a deal. Yeah, we're going to get our teeth bashed in 95% of the seasons, and once in a while we'll be competitive. In the Big 12 right now, it's a wild frontier. It's going to be competitive. Teams are going to get after each other, and someone will start bubbling to the top.
Yeah.
That's a fun environment.
Yep.
That having hope that you're going to be the best in your conference is important. And I don't know if anyone in this conference is really equipped to become Oklahoma or Texas, where you just can get all the resources and win. I don't know that's true. Maybe BYU or Utah or the Arizona schools could grow into that. UCF could grow into that. But right now, nah, it's just not there. And Houston probably has a capability, but they don't have enough engagement locally, I think.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I know we've covered this several times on the show, and we'll continue to cover it and talk about it. I think the Big 12 strength is in numbers. I think the strength, you don't have to have the national brand to be considered one of the better conferences. If you've got 3 or 4 teams, and even if that rotates, I think it's better if it rotates every year, Fitz, or every 3 or 4 years. I think it's better than constantly Michigan and Ohio State, and they're the only 2 from the conference that can win. When Nebraska, they have no shot. Wisconsin, every now and then they'll be okay, but they're an 8-win team max. Penn State, same way. They can get to 10 wins, but they cannot beat Ohio State and Penn State no matter what. I think it's better when you have the turnover. But now on the flip side of that, you got to go win some postseason stuff.
Yep.
You got to win in the college football playoff. You can't continuously say, well, it's a rotating ship here and 3 or 4 teams are good, but then nobody wins. I know we've said that over and over again, but I think it's worth repeating. You have to go prove yourself on the national stage to go get the respect. And I'm sorry, TCU fans. I know you'll be mad at me, but you did more harm than you did good. Beating Michigan put you on the stage, but then for you to get humiliated, it did more harm than good for the conference. Now, I'm not blaming you per se. I'm just saying reality is reality, and it did. You got to go win those games, or at least compete.
Yeah, they helped in the fact that everyone thought Michigan would roll, and they didn't.
Correct.
So that was a boost, but that national championship is really all that people remember at this point, unfortunately, around the country. Big 12 schools don't. They know what happened there, and that was just an unfortunate kind of alignment. But Brett Yormark's saying it quite often, Big B. This conference has got to win in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that. He's putting some pressure on the member schools. You want equal money? Earn it.
Yes.
Go start beating some schools, because we added a look in on the playoffs on how the money's cut up. If you can earn it on the field, you're going to earn it financially.
Yep.
That look in was, he doesn't like the current payouts, but the look in 28 offers the conference an opportunity to get those numbers boosted by proving it on the field in these early years of the 12-team playoff.
Correct. Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in that. Go earn your respect. There's nothing more that I despise in sports when people think that they are gifted something or should get something without going and earning it, and then turn around and be mad that you're not getting the respect. Look, they play football, they play basketball, baseball, whatever the sport happens to be. You're allowed to win. You don't have to lose. It's just, it's like they talk about these NBA games right now. Well, like Jason Tatum, and I hate to go off on a tangent here, but he said, yeah, you can't win them all. We'll bounce back. And I'm go, hold on a second. What do you mean you can't win them all? Where does it written that the Celtics have to lose a game? Where is it written that says, hey, this is a best of 7. You can't just win 4 games in a row and that'd be the end of it. It's just, I hate to be the old guy, Fitz, and say, oh man, it's just the mentality of these kids today. But isn't it? I mean, isn't that the truth? And so I don't want fans to fall into that. I want fans to don't accept losing, don't accept second best, understand that it may happen, but don't accept it. Because once you start accepting it, you become irrelevant. You become Minnesota. You become Arkansas. You just, we can't win, and we're happy to be here. And if we win 7 games, okay, that's great. Nah, that's just not a good existence. It's not a good existence. It's not a good fan experience. But here's the thing. As long as you keep supporting that, what's the benefit, or where's the upside to schools to turn around, Fitz, and say, well, you know what? We got to do better. No, the fans, they don't care if we're 7-5. So why should we put any more emphasis on it? Because we've seen it. We've seen it happen, and they won't put more emphasis on it unless you make them. And I just think winning cures all of that. And there's no price tag to win. There's no emphasis on just not winning. You can go do that, and it helps everything.
Agreed. There's a comment over there about the Big 12 needs to be careful with its non-conference scheduling. I completely agree with that. And
yes,
follow-up comment was, well, the SEC only schedules 8. That's going to have to stop.
Yep.
I mean, if this really is all about money, eventually the SEC is going to realize, well, if we do 9 games, we're going to get more money. I mean, those games, most of those programs are playing 2 automatic wins in that non-conference. They don't use their 4 games to add someone else good. They schedule another, as I think it was Canelio said, a rummy. And if you're the Big 12, okay, you can schedule one of those early, help your team. But you better schedule at least one power program. And that's going to get hard if we all see this kind of collapsing in. I mean, in fact, There's 2 different games. 4 members are playing a non-conference game just because they were already on the schedule. And then play another good team, a Tulane, a UTSA, one of those teams in those conferences. That's what the Big 12's got to do. West Virginia goes out and just says, come on, Pitt, Penn State, let's go.
Yep.
I admire that incredibly.
Yep.
And that says a lot about them. And I wouldn't mind if the Big 12 did it, as long as they're prepared to play those games to win, not just play those games.
I was just going to say that. Go play the games and then go win the games. I go, because look, a huge part of this is obviously the college football playoff. And I leave basketball out of the conversation because for the most part, basketball does a good job with scheduling. You're going to have sometimes where your non-conference schedule is going to stink, but for the most part, you're going to play some pretty good teams in your non-conference schedule. Football, go win the game. Go schedule them and go win. It doesn't all have to be to get the respect in the college football playoff world, Fitz. It just doesn't all have to be that. Non-conference games, just like I just mentioned, they count. They keep scoring those games, and you can win them. So, and as long as you can win, there's no reason not to play them. So we're going to take one final break here before we end the show. One word again. Keep coming with the questions. We'll get to as many as we can, but one final word from our sponsor, Synergy Financial Partners, and we'll be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the mission is to change the way Americans plan for their financial future. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to Studio 73.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Big 12 Insiders. Again, this is Brien Hanley with Tim Fitzgerald today. We covered a lot today, Fitz. We covered marriage, a little bit of marriage advice.
Mm-hmm.
We covered KU possibly headed to the SEC. Keep your eye on that, people. We're not saying that it's 100% going to happen, but keep your eye on that, especially in this crazy world of college athletics. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be, when we're all looking right, something's going to happen left. That's just going to happen. So, any final thoughts or anything else you want to cover or mention, Fitz, at all?
Of all the different layers of realignment, I think the ACC's situation is the most confusing and complex. The fact that there's a great effort to keep the conference together, which I fully support.
Mm-hmm.
You've got two prominent members who are suing to maybe escape, or at least, find out how they can at a cost-effective level. And when that happens, I think it pulls a foundation out of your house, and you're going to start seeing that house collapse. But even in collapse, that's why the information Greg Pflugar shared was, caught so much attention, because we really have no idea who the Big 10, SEC, and Big 12 really covet and want. And what can the Big 12 actually get? Does it matter that they want this school? Again, right now in this current environment, if you get an invite from the two big conferences, you're a damn fool not to go. May not be in your long-term interest, but if you're looking at the math right now, you better do it. But I think the Big 12 is going to get some properties, some institutions out of that will boost the conference in a way that those teams would be lost in the other conferences, just not important in the other conferences. That's one of the things I'm finding about the Big 12 that I love. Hey, BYU, UCF, all you guys are brand new. You sit at the same table. You have the same weight. You're just as important. We got rid of that with Oklahoma and Texas. Nobody thinks they're above anyone else, and maybe they're going to try to earn it and act that way, but in reality, they won't be. They just aren't. There's no blue bloods in this conference. It's about current programs without the huge history in many cases of other programs that make them blue bloods still competing at a high level, and that's fun.
Yep. I think that is what's best for the conference. I think we're going to end it right there, Fitz. So appreciate you everybody taking the time to join us today. Again, remember to always like, follow, subscribe. We appreciate everybody's support. We will be back on Tuesday through Friday, 1 p.m. Central Time. We appreciate everybody being here. Again, this is the Big 12 Insiders. You guys have a good weekend.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your